Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. All right, everybody. Night back. Gonna be back. So we obviously earlier in the day talked a lot about the crazy result early in the afternoon. Ohio State, for the fourth straight year, loses to Michigan. If you missed the immediate reaction, we went ahead and broke this thing down from all angles. Ryan Day, what a disaster, whatever. But what I want to do now is push the story a little bit forward and talk a little bit about a very simple question. If Ryan Day somehow, some way is not back next year, who would actually be a candidate and who could potentially be the next head coach at Ohio State? And it's kind of funny, before we even get to candidates, it's interesting to kind of look at the reaction from social media, because you have seemingly two very differing sides on the topic of Ryan Day. You have some people that say, oh, you know, he's not good, but who are you going to get that's better? You have others that say there is no way that he is coming back. And so let me just share my big picture, 30,000 foot views on the state of the program, where things are, should Ryan Day be back, whatever. First off, to me, I do think this whole situation is much more perilous than the average fan probably realizes, okay? Again, this is a fourth straight loss to Michigan. This is now a fourth straight year that you are not playing in the Big Ten championship game. It's worth noting, by the way, I understand that they're going to make a 12-team playoff, and yeah, if you make a run to the title game, if you win a national championship, Ryan Day is going to be back. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that if they lose, especially early, probably in the first round, that Ryan Day is not going to be the head coach at Ohio State next year, okay? And a couple things on this, again, before we get to the candidates. First of all, one thing that we need to eliminate. Let's stop saying, who are you going to get that's better than Ryan Day? I don't know. Literally anybody. Like I had this thought, and we've had this conversation. I think I've had this conversation privately, not so much publicly. But like, let me ask you a very simple question. We talked about it in the immediate reaction. Ryan Day has a $20 million payroll. It's reported, it's acknowledged. Ohio State openly kind of talked about it throughout the offseason. He has two coordinators that both make $2 million a year. For the idea of who are you going to get that's better? Well, here's the counter. How many coaches could do the exact same thing that Ryan Day does with the resources that he's given? I think there are literally hundreds of coaches, I'm not even kidding, at all levels of football that could go 10-2, not beat Michigan, not go to the Big Ten championship game if they were Ohio State's head coach. And so stop with this idea that, oh my God, who are you going to get that's better? I don't know. Literally anybody. That's one. Two, beyond that, I think this is worth noting as well. I saw some of this. Well, you can't fire him if Ohio State makes the playoff. It's going to throw off timing of everything, and it's this and it's that, and you got to wait 2 weeks into mid-December. I don't care. It's Ohio State. Two things on that topic. First off, if the argument is when you make the playoff, it pushes back the time frame of when you can make the hire, guess what? Ohio State is always going to make a 12-team playoff. Okay, I don't care how bad Ryan Day is. He's not going 7-5 and you can get rid of him in November, okay? The bottom line is he is always going to have this team in playoff contention, but he's never going to be able to get over the hump because that's what he's proven now over multiple years as head coach. So if the argument is you can't fire him because of the timing of the play, then you'll never be able to fire him. So I don't want to hear that. And I also don't believe that you can't get a really good candidate in mid to late December. I think there are certain jobs, second-tier jobs, third-tier jobs where, yes, if you don't get that candidate in place early, you could be in a heap of trouble. You could lose players to the portal. You might not be able to get the candidate that you want. I don't think Ohio State is one of those jobs. I actually think you can make a legitimate argument in the 12-team playoff era, in the NIL era, in the portal era, that Ohio State is actually the best job in college football. Resources, not only on par, but basically superior to everybody other than Oregon in the Big Ten. Basically unlimited spending money in NIL, in staffing. Every resource you need to be successful is there at Ohio State. Obviously, the natural recruiting base, whatever, blah, 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 this and that. And so don't sell me that you can't do it because of the playoff. I believe this is the best job, and I believe there are so many legitimate candidates that would want this job, that would be dying to get this job. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the possibilities of names that in theory maybe could be interested in this job if it opens up. First off, first name. This is the one that you go on any Ohio State message board. I think it's a good name. It is former Ohio State Buckeye. It is former Ohio State assistant. It is Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel, of course, the former NFL head coach of the Tennessee Titans, a guy that is currently out of football. And I think there's a couple interesting variables with Mike Vrabel. Why Ohio State fans are so into this idea. First of all, he is a guy with NFL head, obviously, look, he played at Ohio State. That goes without saying. He was an assistant at Ohio State. He has NFL head coaching experience. And I think it's easy to forget because he's out of the NFL right now that he won big in the NFL. 3 straight playoff appearances, 2 division titles. He had the number 1 seed one year in there. And listen, I'm not going to hold it against him because he lost as the number 1 seed with freaking Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback. I think to me, the number one thing that stands out about Mike Vrabel, he will bring an aura of toughness, of accountability, of physicality. You ain't going to get bullied for a 5th straight year if Mike Vrabel is your head coach when you play Michigan in 2025. The other thing that you got going, if you are able to hire Mike Vrabel, bottom line is he doesn't have a buyout. He ain't coaching right now. So it's not like going somewhere else, trying to hire a sitting head coach and having to pay a $5, $10, $15 million buyout to get somebody out of his contract. So Mike Vrabel is probably the number 1 candidate, should be the number 1 candidate. But I think the counter to he is available is he is available. And he's not only available at Ohio State, but he's available for NFL head coaching jobs as well. And it feels like in the NFL, as exciting as the possibility of bringing in a Bill Belichick or somebody of that stature, the reality is it feels like Mike Vrabel is kind of at the top of all of these coaching lists of guys that are the guys that people are interested in for some of these openings. And so I just bring it up because while you won't have to pay a buyout to get him out of a contract, are you going to be able to convince him to come to college football when he will have NFL opportunities? Obviously, we know the pluses and minuses of college football in this era. I get it. And I think, head to head, most guys would probably take an NFL head coaching job over a college job. Now, the counter to that is Ohio State ain't like most coaching jobs. Not only is he an alum, but it is a place where you're going to, again, have every resource where, you're not just taking any college job. You're taking maybe the best college job, and you will have decided advantages over your competition that you won't get in the NFL. What's also interesting, the NFL coaching cycle really isn't going to ramp up for about another, probably until right around January 1. So if you are eliminated early from the college football playoff, it does feel like the possibility exists that you could always get him before NFL teams really have the opportunity to bring him in. So Mike Vrabel is candidate number 1. He's obviously, he's a great candidate. He is a great candidate with ties to the school, and I would be very curious if you could actually convince him to be your next head coach. Second candidate, another name that's very popular, another former Ohio State player, a guy that, by the way, this year is going to the college football playoff. That is Marcus Freeman. Obviously, coach at Notre Dame, coached at Ohio State. And oh, by the way, beat USC on Saturday to finish 11-1. Notre Dame unofficially has punched a ticket. Notre Dame, by the way, is going to host a college football playoff game. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility they're playing Ohio State in round 1 of the college football playoff. Why Marcus Freeman makes sense. 1, alum. 2, like I've said, I think the resources at Ohio State are second to none. Notre Dame, remember, first of all, it's hard to really know. Obviously, they have NIL money, but is this a school that's really going to put together a $20 million roster to compete at the highest levels of college football? I find it interesting that since Marcus Freeman has taken the job, he's done well recruiting, but he's lost some of his biggest recruits to other schools. Deuce Knight, quarterback this year, announced that he flipped from Notre Dame to Auburn, obviously, a few weeks ago. Previous recruiting class, Keon Keeley was a 5-star edge that was committed to Notre Dame, flipped to Alabama. And so you wonder, when you get in these high-stakes kind of recruiting wars, these bidding wars, is Notre Dame really strapped and ready to do it? So you look at Notre Dame. I don't want to say he's doing more with less because Notre Dame's a great job. I'm not going to be one of those guys that trashes Notre Dame, that tells you they suck, that tells you they're the worst team that has ever existed in the history of college athletics. But I just bring it up to very simply say that when you look at Marcus Freeman, I just think that he is a guy that I think he'd have to at least listen, right? Obviously, we know that there is also, the academic restrictions, and there's a lot of things going on at Notre Dame that you simply don't have to deal with if you're going to Ohio State. And so, to me, I think he'd probably at least have to listen. Now, the counter with Marcus Freeman is a few things. One, he could be in that college football playoff, right? And as long as he's in that college football playoff, he ain't a candidate anywhere. So if you lose in the opening round, if you're Ohio State, say you lose in the opening round of Notre Dame, well, now you got to wait another week to hope that Marcus Freeman loses before he becomes available as a candidate. I think an interesting counterpoint would be, what if you actually play Notre Dame in round one of the college football playoff and beat them? Hard to make the sell that he should be the guy. That he should be the guy if Ryan Day just beat him head to head. He obviously beat him the last 2 years. The famous Lou Holtz game. Oh my God, Ryan Day got the best of Lou Holtz. Blah, blah, blah. But the point I'm trying to make, if you're 0-3 against the current head coach, I think that kind of makes it a tough sell. So that would be an interesting scenario as well if Ohio State and Notre Dame were to play in the playoff and Notre Dame were actually to lose. By the way, I should have mentioned this off the top. Make sure that you are subscribed to our Torres on Ohio State page. We have my main page, Aaron_Torres, but we also have Torres on Ohio State. For all your late breaking Ohio State news. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers for Ohio State fans, by Ohio State fans. Make sure you're following Torres on Ohio State. Okay. So Marcus Freeman is number 2. Number 3, this is an interesting name, and it's going to take some boosters to really get this done. I think you should go call Curt Cignetti. I really, truly believe it in my heart of heart. Curt Cignetti, just think about this. If Curt Cignetti could do what he just did at Indiana, and by the way, for all the talk about, Ohio State blew out Indiana, I'm sorry, Indiana had 2 special teams disasters. Ohio State barely broke 300 yards of total offense against Indiana. And by the way, don't you want, after the Ryan Day experience, the cocky SOB that is Coach Sig? Yeah, he took the loss, but the counter to that, it's freaking Indiana. He's supposed to take the loss. He's not supposed to beat Ohio State. And so to me, Curt Cignetti would be a guy that I would absolutely call. Now, the big issue, I looked it up before we started here. He's got a $13 million buyout currently at Indiana, thanks to that new contract. Now, what would be interesting is you look at the situation here. I would have to assume that you can't both fire Ryan Day and buy Curt Cignetti out of his current contract. So Ryan Day's buyout, I believe, is like in the $35 million range. Probably a reason that he might not actually be fired. But at the same time, look, I don't know if I mentioned this off the top, but what this feels like is almost like the John Calipari situation last year after Kentucky lost to Oakland. Ryan Day is going to, I don't see the scenario where Ryan Day isn't actively looking for jobs outside of Ohio State. I don't know how he can come back. And so because of it, that's where Curt Cignetti comes in. That's where you sit there and say, is this a guy that we can get? Is this a guy that would be a possibility? Is this a guy that would take the job, would listen to the job? Curt Cignetti, to me, I know he's a little bit older. You give him Ohio State talent, he ain't losing. Okay, he ain't losing. I think it's pretty cool. He's embraced the portal. He's embraced NIL. I think he'd be a rock star. I know he's only done it for 1 year, but he's really done it for a decade at a bunch of different schools, and I think he would win at the highest level at Ohio State. Finally, a couple other names. First of all, I don't know that it's the perfect fit, but I saw some people say, give us Coach Prime. Okay, so listen, I don't think Coach Prime is going anywhere. I think Coach Prime is happy at Colorado, but you got to at least listen if you're Coach Prime at Ohio State, right? I mean, Ohio State is one of the blue blood Cadillac great jobs in all of college football. And so if you're talking about a guy in Coach Prime, if he's ever going to leave Colorado, he's not going to have very many better situations than this after a 9-3 season. And then beyond that, I also just don't know, are you ever going to have a better opportunity than Ohio State? All the resources, all the NIL. And I think the thing that Coach Prime has proven is that one, he basically, he can create he even if players are getting paid, like Shador's getting paid, Travis Hunter's getting paid, whatever, he still demands discipline and accountability. I think he's doing the NIL world about as well as anybody, where he's like, don't come here if you're not ready to compete and play hard or whatever. So I don't know how that would ring with Ohio State fans. I'd be curious for your perspective. I think the next candidate is kind of the same. It's Lane Kiffin. I think Lane Kiffin's going to miss the college football playoff. I still believe he would have been the number 1 candidate at Florida. If Florida had opened, we know that, of course, that is not. Billy Napier, of course, had that late streak with DJ Lagway. So Billy Napier's not going anywhere. But Lane Kiffin, it's never going to get better than it was this year at Ole Miss. And there's not going to be any other options in terms of places to go after this season. So it wouldn't surprise me. Does Lane Kiffin try to throw his hat into the ring on that job? So those are some of the guys that come to mind. I think, I think that Mike Vrabel has to be the number one candidate. I think Marcus Freeman is right there. I would call Curt Cignetti. I would, on top of that, see if Coach Prime would be interested, see if Lane Kiffin would be interested. But I'm here to tell you, I think it's a lot hotter than a lot of people realize. And I think if Ryan Day loses early in the playoff, he ain't going to be back next year. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube. New clips, new videos going up every single day. Also, do me a quick favor. Make sure that you're also following our Ohio State specific Twitter page, Torres on Ohio.